Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Every Horror Film Where Horror is Forever, where today things are going to get a little bit sinister. That's right. We're taking a look at Sinister 2012. That's right. I own it on Blu-ray because that's all I do. If you've seen our last review, I'm a avid collector, so this is just me showing off that I have this movie on Blu-ray.
You're gonna have to give us a tour of your collection one day.
We should. I can do that. It's not massive, but it's pretty good for what I've collected over the past 4 or 5 years. I'd say I'm happy with it. It's gonna keep
What's your
growing.
what's your most prized collection item?
I don't really have anything that's like something that someone can't get. I don't have anything valuable, but I think my favorite is probably a copy of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1931 that I own.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and that's also one of my favorite horror movies of all time, which I'll have to make you watch one day.
Yeah.
But that is another discussion. I like it because it's super rare. Well, I'm not going to say it's rare, but a lot of people don't have that in their collection, and I do. And I like the
Yeah.
movie, so that's why. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Bagul, okay? That's what we want to know.
You mean Mr. Boogie, right?
Mr. Boogie, Bagul, whatever you want to call him. I've got a lot to say about this movie. I'm very excited for this review. I know you are as well. Jeff, I'll kind of let you get started. Sinister 2012. This, at least online, is got to be one of the most talked about films in the last 15, 20 years. And there's a lot of people that have a lot to say about this movie for very specific reasons. Give us
Mhm.
your experience with the movie, what you know about it, and your overall thoughts going into this.
This is one. This is a review that I've been chomping at the bit to do ever since we started doing our reviews. Because you're right, there is a lot to talk about with this one. Sinister really burst on the scene right in the middle of the Insidious and Conjuring movie explosion, and really kind of staked its claim, and it's still being talked about 12 years later. It resonated with a lot of people, even from the trailer. I remember when the trailer came out, I was in high school and I was sitting in the cafeteria, loud cafeteria, watching it on some kid's laptop, sharing headphones with him. I had one earbud in. And the scene from the trailer when Mr. Boogie turns his head in the picture, immediately right there, I'm like, yo, like chills right away in the worst possible atmosphere for watching that kind of thing. So immediately I knew that there was something special about this movie. Um, Finally going to watch it, I'm not gonna lie, it kind of caught me off guard. I knew it was rated R. I didn't know quite how R it was until I got into it. But since then, I have purchased it on Blu-ray. I've seen it a couple times. This time watching it would probably be my fifth time, I think. And I gotta say, this movie is this movie has the makings of a perfect horror movie and the anchors of a bad one. It's real interesting amalgam of factors in this movie that I'm excited to talk about. I've been itching to talk about this one. The ending is one of my most discussed, one of my most talked about horror endings of all time, and I'm ready to give it to you. So let's just get into it, man. Sinister 2012. What's your history with it? You saw it in theaters, right?
I did not. I remember. I'm pretty sure this was this movie I'm thinking about, but I remember this is 2012. I mean, what I was a freshman in high school. I really wasn't that. I liked horror, but I wasn't into it like I am now as an adult. But I remember I had a few friends over my house one night, and back when like the big box TVs were
Oh
like
yeah.
cool, like, oh, you've got like a 50-inch box TV, man, let's come over. And I'm like, okay, sure. So my stepdad had one, and we'd come over, we'd rent movies on demand. That's what you would do back then, which you can still do.
Mhm.
But I remember hearing about this movie. I said, I hear this movie's really scary. I had like a couple of my buddies over, hey, let's watch this. Man, I tell you what, after I saw this movie, I'm pretty sure for a good 8, 9, 10 year, almost a 10-year run, this was what before I saw some other movies, this was the scariest movie I had ever seen.
Wow.
This was it. If people asked me all the way up until I was about 2021. Hey man, what's the scariest movie? Oh, have you seen Sinister? That's it. That's the scariest movie
Wow.
of all time. And actually, which this is all subjective, it doesn't matter. I think they did a study a couple years ago where technically this is the scariest movie of all time due to your heart rate during the movie. I think they did. It's a study. You have to go look it up, but they watched a couple different scary movies, and this one had people with the highest heart rate throughout the film. So that's how they labeled it the scariest movie. So kind of an interesting thing. But for a long time, this was the absolute scariest movie of all time to me until I watched, a couple other movies that I think took that spot. And now rewatching it again, um, I don't think it is as scary, but I think a lot of that has to do with us being desensitized to so much. But back in 2012, man, this was some serious shit that happened in this movie.
Yeah, yeah, they did not they did not bend over for that PG-13 rating at all, dude. They wanted it. And
Mm-mm.
you know what's funny is I know that study you're talking about. I read about it there where they talked about average and peak heart rates, and I know Insidious was on there. I think Paranormal Activity was on there. Yeah, Sinister was on there. And I remember the headline. It's like Sinister is the scariest movie of all time according to science, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's super interesting. That's very, very interesting to me because, I mean, this movie's very. It's just interesting to me because it teeters the line for me between being an instant classic and very overrated. It plays dangerously close to overrated territory. But like most movies that are rated that highly, you get into it and you're like, oh, I get it, man. So, and right from the get go too, um, this is one that in a time and era where almost everything's been done, this one still attempts to golden rule number 4, push boundaries. There's no better example of that than the first 10 seconds of the movie, dude.
Yeah.
It opens up with a Super 8 snuff film about this hooded family of 4 getting hung by a branch that's falling.
Yep.
What the hell? I remember I saw that. I was like, oh, and it looked real enough. It looked real. It didn't look like movie. It looked like actual film that someone found. And I think that they were very authentic with it. And that plays a lot into the atmosphere. But back to what I was saying, that first 10 seconds of that family being hung, golden rule number 4, you got to push the boundaries. And you did it. And you did it specifically because you not only lingered on the family being hung, which is
Mm-hmm.
shocking imagery in and of itself, but there was a kid in the mix. One of the things I was talking about 2 reviews ago with The Lodge is if you want to be memorable, kill the kid on screen. You know what I mean? Violence against kids is still taboo in the horror world as far as general audiences go. It 2017 didn't shy away from it. The Lodge shied away from it. When you show it like that, it's riveting enough, especially if you have kids, but even if you don't, it's shocking enough. It'll make you uncomfortable. And that's what
Yeah.
we're here for. We're here to have that kind of emotional response. So in the first 10 seconds, you're pushing a major horror boundary right off the bat. You've got the most difficult golden rule to acquire. So, dog, I am in. I am so astronomically in at this point. Bring it on.
I agree. To me, this is one of the best openings of any horror film I've ever seen. I mean, it hooks you in automatically with what you're watching on screen. I mean, you're not just watching, 4 people get hung, you're watching them get hung and watching them die while doing it. It lingers. You watch it. The film, it's old, it's staticky, it's a Super 8 film. And we'll probably say that word quite a few
A
times in
lot
this
of times,
review.
yeah.
But this movie, it definitely hooks you in immediately. I remember the first time seeing it, I said, "Wow, I don't know what to do. I have to keep watching this movie." it's been on for like 30 seconds. I have to keep watching. So immediately this movie hooks you in. If you aren't hooked in by the first scene, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, well, it's hook, line, and sinker, man. It does not stray away from it, and it lets you know right away this is what you're in for. And this is as easy as it gets. So bring it on. What do we open up with? Who do we open up with? Ethan Hawke, right? We've seen him before, and not only have we seen him before, we've seen him in a Scott Derrickson horror movie before, The Black Phone. Ethan Hawke, watching it this time around, how did he do, in your opinion?
I love Ethan Hawke. He's one of my favorite actors. He instantly stuck with me once I watched this movie for the first time, and every time I've rewatched it, I love him as an actor. If you go look at the Black Phone review, I think that was the first movie we ever reviewed on this
Yep.
channel. We weren't necessarily the biggest fans of it, but we did love Ethan Hawke's performance, and
Mhm.
this is the same thing. And this was kind of the prequel to the Black Phone in a little bit. It's not related, but a lot of the same people behind the project, Blumhouse, all that stuff, were involved in that movie that were involved in Sinister. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you, Scott Derrickson, sort of like David Gordon Green. I'm not going to say is a household name. He doesn't really. He doesn't. He's not up there with the James Camerons and the Stanley Kubricks, but he makes some solid films, man. Some of them are
mhm.
hits for me. Some of them are misses for me. I'm into it for real. And Sinister, it might be my favorite Scott Derrickson movie. I don't know. I'd have to revisit, but it's well made. And the writer of this movie, I don't know, is used to be like a horror blog writer or something like that. I don't know exactly, but the writer of this movie is vetted in horror. So the writing and the directing, a nice 1-2 punch. Ethan Hawke seals the deal. Ethan Hawke's not really a lead man, in my opinion, but he carries his own weight in this movie really well. And for such a small scale, one location, one family cast, he's got the emotional range in this movie that I think a lot of people weren't expecting of him, and I'm pretty satisfied with it.
Oh my God, it's Ethan Hawke.
Oh my God, it's Ethan Hawke!
Oh man, had to throw that in there. But yes, I'm a big Ethan Hawke fan, and in this movie he kills it. So let's get into it. This movie starts out after that opening scene. Ethan Hawke, his character, which I gotta give credit to this movie for. I'm not gonna say it started the true crime genre wave, but back in 2012, true crime was not nearly as popular as it is now.
Oh,
And
yeah.
going back in to watch this movie, that immediately caught my mind was, oh yeah, this guy's a true crime author, and that just was so funny how that type of genre blew up so quick over the past 10 years.
And it's funny to see true crime associated with hit best-selling books rather
Right.
than a dozen new podcasts a week and a dozen new Netflix documentaries a week. It's funny to see true crime associated with best-selling authors rather than whatever you want to call it today.
And I like it that it's a book, because imagine if this movie was made today. It's like, hey man, I'm doing this for my new true crime podcast. I'd be like, oh, I'm turning it off.
I'm shooting a documentary and it's found footage.
It just wouldn't have worked. So this family, him and his family, they move in. He's a famous true crime author. He's written one really successful book, and then after that, he's put out a couple duds. So he's trying to recapture that flame, recapture the lightning in a bottle to write, one more true crime book. And his family, they're moving into this house, which we come to find out a little bit later why they do. And while they're moving in, he gets paid a visit by the sheriff of the county that he's living in. We know it's in Pennsylvania. I think it's King County, they say. And I love the sheriff. He's just straight up. He's like, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm not a fan of your work.
Yeah, and that gives a good scale to how much this writer is not only known, but how much his book matters to people other than himself. The sheriff immediately doesn't like him because his hit book from years ago apparently in some way or fashion let a killer go free
Mhm.
because it shared new light on like evidence or lack of evidence in a certain cold case or something like that. Anyway, it's hinted to, but that's why the sheriff doesn't like him and has a really nasty disposition towards him, which is interesting. It's an
Yeah.
interesting angle. And it's I think mainly it's in there just to be like, because he delivers the line that says, so I'm guessing that your department is not at my disposal, because obviously true crime writers, they got to have connections with local law enforcement, they got to
Right.
get into the information, they got to know what kind of evidence is there. So to not have the police department at your disposal as a true crime researcher, and especially as you start discovering some shocking things that other people might not know about, it really isolates you. So I like that dynamic there. The sheriff character himself is really only there to introduce that dynamic, but I'll take it.
Sure. Yeah, it's a nice background thing going on there. So, and you really kind of get the sense that Ethan Hawke's character Ellison is I mean he's kind of a dick. I mean he's a little bit cocky, a little bit arrogant. He needs another hit. I A lot of people say they don't like his character in this movie, which is fine because I don't think you're supposed to like him, but the way he portrays the character as the movie goes on, it just shows how great of an actor Ethan Hawke is and why he's one of my favorites. He does such a good job at this guy that is putting his family in danger just so he can get one last really good book. And that dynamic plays out later as the film goes on. But I just think he does such a good job in the movie.
He does, and we'll talk about some of his arc later on. But lo and behold, Ethan Hawke has moved his family into the house where a family was murdered, the family who we saw being hung in the tree a year prior. He has just moved in there. His wife doesn't know about it. His family doesn't know about it. His wife knows that he has done moves before based on the research he was doing, because she makes a line like, "We didn't move in a couple houses down from a crime scene, did we?" And he's like, "No, we did not.
Correct.
No,
And
we
I
did
and
not."
I love how they kind of show that on camera whenever he walks in the house and he kind of like turns around and he looks and you see the back of the tree that we saw in the original Super 8 film in the beginning, and you kind of put two and two together like, oh, this dude really moved his family into the house where a murder was. Now, I got to tell you, man, that's pretty hardcore. That's
It is.
hardcore.
It's hardcore, but I'm scratching my head, and maybe you can shed some light on this. I mean, what benefit? I mean, if you don't believe in the paranormal, what benefit do you gain from moving into your book subject's house once they're dead? I mean, moving into that house after they've been killed, he's not looking for ghosts. He's not looking for a body in the backyard. What
Correct.
does he expect to gain?
I think it's more of him trying to get in the space they were in just to maybe feel like he can find something that law enforcement wasn't able to find, because the deputy or the sheriff kind of talks about how he thinks you can gonna find something that we couldn't find. We did our job. And I think he kind of takes that as a slight. He's like, you know what? I wrote this best true crime author selling book, and I can come in and I can do this, and I can do it better than you guys. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to buy this house where this happened, and I'm going to find something that you couldn't. That's the only way I really could explain it. Um, you know, could you have just gone there, gotten in contact with law enforcement, maybe just visited the house for
I,
a time or two? Yeah. But this guy, I mean, he takes it to the extreme, man. I mean, he I don't know.
Yeah, he clearly does. I mean, it's one thing if it was like the John Wayne Gacy house and you were going in there to tear up floorboards or tear it down or something, but
Yeah.
it's not what you're going there to do. So whatever, man. Clearly, you're in a housing market where you can just move around if you want to, and it's just, if it doesn't work out, you can just move back.
Well,
Completely
that
unheard of nowadays.
exactly. They even say, like, while they're at dinner, he's like, well, we haven't sold the old house yet. So technically they still have the old house that they moved away from and this new house that they
Not
just
how it works in the real world now.
yeah, maybe in 2012, but not now.
Shit.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, they're moving stuff. We get introduced to the kids. The girl, she's a painter. She likes to paint stuff. You got the typical, the kids are sad. They don't want to move home. They don't want to leave their friends. They don't want to go to a new school, all that stuff. And this is kind of where we start to really pick things up in an interesting direction. He goes upstairs to the attic to put some boxes away, and he runs across a box called Home Movies. And this comes with a film projector, some Super 8 films, and he's like, "Huh, that's weird," because it's the only box left in the attic. So, why was it left there? Why was it put there? So he thinks it's suspicious. So he takes these movies, takes them downstairs to his office. Later on that night, everyone's going to bed. First night in the house. This guy, he says, "You know what? I'm gonna flip these movies on. Let's see what happens." And I gotta tell you, when I was younger, what we saw on these Super 8 films was absolute insanity. You could not tell me that there was anything scarier than that in that moment. You couldn't tell me that, at least, because this shit gets wild.
Yeah, and even by today's standard, it's pretty up there. Um, the first one he viewed was The Hanging, and obviously he was like, he's blown away. He's like, uh-oh, like he doesn't realize what he was getting into when he opened the box. But it's what we saw in the Super 8 films. You're right. It's bone chilling for sure. It's like actual gore you'd find on the dark web,
Yeah,
just without the blood. It's shot very well. It's acted very well. And the absolute highlight of this movie is the sound design.
correct.
The music it puts in, the lack of music it puts in, the distortion, the waves, the balancing, the effects. Oh, it's crazy, man. From a production standpoint, the sound design is what adds to the terror for sure. I said that a lot about The Exorcist. Dude, you can have as much eye candy on screen as you want, but if it's not ringing in my ears, you're missing it. You're missing the punch. So this movie
Correct.
nailed that.
They did. They nailed it. If you haven't heard the soundtrack, go look it up. It's downright disturbing and scary, and it adds to the film. So he's watching, the tree where this happened, and it just hits home automatically. Oh my God, this is in the backyard of the house I just bought, which obviously he knows, but when you see it on film and you see it happen, it hits another level. It automatically, you feel like this family, this guy, they are already in some sort of danger
Yeah.
already. So, he does that. He watches a couple more. He watches one where um they're doing like a family barbecue somewhere. And I think it's barbecue 79 is what they call it. And the family's out at a picnic, they're having a barbecue, and then the film cuts, and then all of a sudden all the family is trapped inside this car, and it's chained down, they're taped inside in there, they can't get out, and somebody just throws a match and just douses the car, lights it on fire, and you see the car jerking around with the people burning alive in there. It's just so jarring. And the first time you really see the movies, it's like you're watching two movies in one. And when you listen to people say what's the scariest part of the movie, it's easily the Super 8 films. They
Oh yeah.
let alone make half of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that is I feel like the writers and Scott Derrickson had this idea to push the boundaries and make a horror movie centered around snuff films, basically. And still getting an R rating from the MPAA, but it's very obvious that that is top of the list. Like that's what's got to be in our next movie, and they nailed it, man. They really delivered on it. It is the highlight, obviously. I mean, that is why it's the scariest. I mean, there's some moments that come next from like his son who
Mhm.
suffers from night terrors, apparently, like at prior houses, where there's like some banging around in the hallway, and Ethan Hawke goes to investigate, and there's a moving box, and the kid like spider walks out of the box
Yeah.
screaming. That's like a good trailer moment,
Hmm.
but that's not where the scares come from, in my opinion. I don't think it's weird because like that might be one of the loudest scares in the movie, but it's after you see a family get burned to death in a car, what's a kid popping out of a box?
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, that happens, and he's very disturbed, and he starts, drowning the whiskey automatically. He's like, "Oh my God, what have I got myself into?" And so, yeah, you mentioned the kid, he's having night terrors, which there is one scene where it genuinely is a little creepy, at kind of near the end when the kid's outside. I think that's a good one. But, kind of coming out of the box. And this is where I think a lot of people really have issues with this movie and that you mentioned earlier is that while there is some top grade horror in this movie, stuff that you probably have never seen before, there are also some elements in here that take away from that. And when you go back and you rewatch it, it's so frustrating because, like you said, this had all the makings of an absolute classic. And they just do a couple things in there that are just jump scare, try to play to modern audiences, if you want to call it that. And some of that does take away from the movie just enough, I think, for people to kind of knock it down a peg.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the kid with the night terrors popping out of the box, that is one of those things. I know that you can only show so much snuff film on in a trailer, but
Correct.
and you need to create something. But that's the first of many anchors that I'm gonna talk about with this movie. But Ethan Hawke's freaking out. He didn't realize what he just stumbled into. He goes to call the cops. Uh, as soon as he gets to the police, he has second thoughts. He's seeing his hit book on the shelf, and he's thinking, wait a second, I just hit a gold mine. I just
Yep.
found the case for my next book. So he has second thoughts and he decides to take it on himself rather than call the police and turn in this murder evidence. So
I
he
love that
starts,
scene. I love that scene.
yeah, I mean, you can see the wheels turning. Ethan Hawke did a good job with no lines. So,
He
yeah,
did.
man.
He looks at the book and he's like, nah, I can do this. I can do this. I'm gonna put my family in danger just because I am going to write this best-selling book. And he and his daughter is like, hey, if this book doesn't work out, can we move back home? He's like, look, I'm gonna write the best book ever. And it's gonna be fantastic. And this guy is just so deranged and set on writing this one book about all this stuff that he just tries to take everything else out, his family, friends, whatever, doesn't matter. I'm writing this book, and that's all I give a shit about. And I think it just really works with his character.
And it explains a lot too. It explains a lot of to like because in a normal situation you'd be like, why didn't he just turn that evidence into the police? Why didn't he just this? Why didn't he just do that? The movie does a good job explaining away potential plot holes and clearing
Right.
them up before they're a problem. So yeah, man. Next morning they're having breakfast. Kids are going off to school. Dad gets to work on the book, and he cracks open the third film. What is the third snuff film in the box?
I can't remember specifically, and if we get these out of order, I do apologize. I think the next one he looks at, or one of the main ones where it starts to kind of kick the can down the road, is the one where they're having the pool party.
Yep.
And they're all out there, they're at the pool hanging out. And the thing that works about these Super 8 films is, man, they just look so legit. I mean, if I moved into a random house one day and I went in the attic just trying to put stuff away and I found those box of films, in the way they were shot, I could legit see that happening in real life. Like this, it looks so real. And they did shoot it on a Super 8 camera, and that's what makes it so believable. And it hits you right away.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's so he's watching the pool party video and it cuts to a scene at night at a house where there's some chase loungers around a pool and there's people laying in them. And you look closely, you notice that the people are tied to the loungers and they also got a cinder block underneath them. Well, whoever's behind the camera starts pulling these chairs into the pool and having them sink to the bottom with the cinder block, immediately causing the people in the chair to start thrashing. Oh my God. Easily. Top five worst ways to die, for sure. I mean, burning alive is the most painful, but drowning like that with no escape, oh my God.
Yep.
Made the hair on my neck stand up, but
I agree. And if you haven't seen this movie, and I hope you have if you're watching this review, but if you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor when you watch this movie. Make sure it is pitch black outside. Make sure it is quiet, the lights are off, and turn the volume all the way up. Because this movie, when you watch these Super 8 films, it is 10 times more effective than just putting it on during the middle of the day. You're playing on your phone. No, watch this.
yeah, it is such a good classic turn off all the lights, close all the windows, and get nervous, think you heard a sound down the hallway of your own house. It's definitely one of
Right.
those movies for sure. It sends chills down your spine. But people are drowning. They're thrashing in the chair in the pool, and the camera pans over, and it looks like some kind of figure is in the water. What figure is in the water?
It is Mr. Boogie.
Mr. Boogie.
Mr. Boogie. Um, yeah, so like you said, if you go back and you watch and you do some detective work like Ellison does, he's like, I thought I saw something there. He goes back and he watches the movie and he kind of looks at the bottom of the pool and he sees this figure and this face. And the best way I can describe it is it kind of is a mix between Michael Jackson and a death metal band.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to say some kind of ghoul Michael Jackson, like some kind of like necro Michael Jackson.
Correct. A lot of people, and I might catch some flack. A lot of people dislike the look of Bagul. I think the look is fine. I mean, it's different. I like it. What ends up happening later in the movie kind of takes away from some of that. But as far as just the look, um, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, we didn't get a good look in the pool here. All we saw is him starting to turn. Ellison pauses the movie, or he stops the film. Anyone who's ever run Super 8 knows if you stop a film, you're going to burn right through it right away.
Right.
So it starts to burn up. He's like, ah, crap. He tries to cut and paste and work on it a little bit. We see a little bit of workshopping with Super 8. Clearly, this was like a love letter to Super 8 technology, but
Yeah.
he's chopping it, he's putting it together, and he's playing it again and recording it on his digital camera so he can move it to the laptop and it's digital and he can pause it and rewind it. But yeah, we see this figure in the pool, and it's the first glimpse we get of this Bagul figure. It's funny I didn't really get the sense that he reacted in the way that I think most people would when they see that in a pool.
Yeah.
I feel like his focus was more on, obviously, the body's getting drugged into the pool, but dude, there's a guy in there. Like, who is that? But
Dude, there's a guy in there.
dude, he was not as blown away as I would have been if I had found that.
Yeah, at that point, I'd have been, I mean, I'd have been losing my mind regardless watching this stuff. But to see there be like some demon looking guy at the bottom of the pool, I'm like, oh, hell no. I'd have been losing it. I'd have been
But
losing it.
is this so? This is the part where I think things start banging around in the attic again, and
Correct.
so he goes up there to investigate, and he sees a little bit of movement on the ground. Lo and behold, it's a corn snake in the attic underneath a box lid. The box lid goes to the box of the Super 8 films. He didn't find that before. Snake wanders off, but on the bottom of this lid is different drawings of each of the murders that they see on film. So someone has been cataloging these murders in the box and drawing it on the board.
Mhm.
And in each of these drawings, it says it has a stick figure for each family member and also a stick figure for Mr. Boogie. So that's the first time we start to identify and start to see this Mr. Boogie character. And it's also when we meet a deputy, not the sheriff that visited earlier, but uh, a rookie cop, local
Deputy
boy,
so and so.
deputy so and so comes in the house and lets him know that snakes don't have feet, but also he wants an autograph. So he so he walks in, and they start bantering a little bit. Good actor, deputy so and so, but he goes into the office and starts like looking around. And deputy so and so is clearly a fan of Ellison. He's a fan of his book. So unlike the sheriff who doesn't want to help him, deputy so and so wants his name in the acknowledgement. So he wants to help in any way he can.
Mhm.
So Ellison sends him on his way on a wild goose chase to go track down some addresses and names. And deputy so and so, looking over the board, looking over the board, see some screenshots from the videos, and one of the screenshots is this symbol that appears not only on the car hood from the burning car, but in the next video I don't think we've talked about yet, where the family was getting their throat slit in the bed. There was like some kind of
Correct.
weird pagan symbol,
Mhm.
and he refers Ellison to this local of professor of
demonology or something.
Demon crime or something weird. Something weird, very niche.
He's like, I know the perfect guy.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like Pawn Stars. Like, oh, I actually got a guy who's an expert on this.
Listen, I got a guy. Let me get him down here. Okay.
Yeah, dude.
That's funny. Yeah, so that happens and Ellison has all this stuff in his office. And it's really crazy to see how he's got it lit up and all this stuff. But on the flip side of that, we have this family dynamic, and to me, this is something I really missed out on the first time I really watched this movie because when I was younger, I just cared about like the scary stuff. I
You're
really
right.
didn't notice the stuff in the background, the family dynamic. The actress, the wife of Ethan Hawke in this movie, she does a fantastic job of just being this protective but concerned mother of her kids, and at the same time, very worried and concerned about her husband. I mean, she's had to put up with a lot. She says, "We moved to these different towns for you to do these books. People hate you." I can't even go to the grocery store without people looking at me. The kids are getting bullied at school. All this because this guy has, done some good things. He's done some bad things with his profession. And that really plays on the dynamic of this family that is, being put in this position, reluctantly, and they're having to do the best they can with it. And I think that's a good B plot in this movie that really is a lot better than I'd noticed before.
Yeah, a lot of people say that the wife is really like over hysterical and over exaggerating. I see a lot of people say, skipping ahead a little bit, but we'll come back. When she finally finds out that they're in the murder house, she's like screaming and she's like talking about putting the kids in danger. Now, now, here's the thing: we as an audience member, and I'm talking about when she finds out about the house, we as an audience know what's going on. We have an outside perspective. We are omnipotent, but the characters inside the house, all they know is that he's writing a true crime book. I don't think it's a realistic conversation to say that moving into a crime scene puts the kids in danger within the house. But what's your stance on that? Do you consider, like, if you moved into your house and you found out that someone was murdered there, would you suddenly think that you were in danger?
I don't think that I would think I was in danger, but I totally get her response when she figures out that this is the house it happened at. It happened in the backyard. I have a very strong feeling that if I did that to my wife, she would not be very happy with me. So I get what you're saying, but I feel like I honestly feel like the wife was totally justified. That I are they in danger? Yes, later on in the movie they are, but is in terms of like real life, hey, you moved into this house, something bad happened. Are they in danger? No, but I feel like the wife is justified because I don't know how many wives are going to put up with the stuff that this guy pulls.
Yeah, and it must be a lot. So, but we're skipping ahead. Basically, the boy gets in trouble at school for drawing a hanging family at school. Um, Obviously, we know the hanging family from the house. Ethan Hawke knows that, but the mom doesn't know anything about that. She has this. I don't want to say B plot, but she's been really honing in on this one thing, and it's that nobody goes in Dad's office. There's some scary stuff in there. Ethan Hawke, don't leave the door open. I don't want the kids finding out. Shut the damn door. Don't let them see. Nobody go in there. Even Ethan Hawke was like, "What's the number one rule? Don't go in there. What's the number two rule? Shut the door." So clearly, that's a well-established thing that has been a problem in the past. And so the mom is compounding her anxiety and her frustration because she thinks that he's getting careless and the kids are wandering in there and getting scared. And
Correct.
that's why this is happening. So that is that's more flushed out, and I didn't notice it till this time around either. And that's a really flushed out, like, adding to the, well, why doesn't Ethan Hawke immediately believe that something paranormal is going on? Well, it's because one, he's half wasted each time, And two, it's a very known fact that he leaves the door open. And so the kid probably wandered in there and found something he wasn't supposed to. So that's why he doesn't go towards the paranormal right away, whereas some other people might.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And so pausing the family dynamic, we'll get back to him talking to the demonologist or professor, whatever his name was, and this is where we kind of learn about it's not Mr. Boogie to the kids. It is to this guy. It's Bagul. He's a pagan deity, and his symbol and his meaning is essentially he is the eater of children. And in order to stay alive, he has to consume the souls of children. And he does this by using imagery and using images to, I guess, possess children and to get to them, which at some points I was a little confused by it, but I guess it makes sense with what I'm saying. I hope I make sense. But yeah, that's kind of how we get introduced to Bagul, and we see his symbol and what it means, and we start to kind of put the pieces together a little bit, because we haven't even said this yet, but the reason that Ellison is looking, or he moved his family into this house, is not only because of the murder, but in every murder he's seen on the films, and in this one, a kid has gone missing. So Stephanie, the girl from the original film that we see in the beginning, she's the little girl, has gone missing. He starts to put it together in the other cases that all these other murders he's seeing on film, he looks them up, that the deputy helps him with, it always has a missing kid. So there is some kind of connection there. Bagul, missing kids. He's starting to kind of formulate something here.
Yeah, the professor calls in and does a really big like exposition dump, and that's really his whole purpose, was to tell us, okay, this is Bagul, this is what's known about him, this is the rules he plays by, just to give us some pieces, because Ellison's not uncovering them fast enough, to give us some pieces to put stuff together. Um, yeah, and that's really it, because he sends them the symbols. We didn't really talk about the snuff film of the family getting slit in their throats while they're sleeping.
Correct.
Not much really to say there, but
there is one. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Except for the symbol that he walks by in the film, which is what he sends to the professor. And he goes back and finds the reflection of this creature, basically, in the film. He finds a very quick, like, blink and you'll miss it moment where this reflection of this weird figure that kind of looks like the one in the pool is standing there in the mirror. And that brings us, skip a couple steps, but it brings us to a point where the laptop's sitting open while Ellison's processing all this information, and Bagul is on screen in a paused video. This moment in the video is paused, and Bagul in this paused video does this move right here, where he looks at Ethan Hawke and then he looks back. Dog, grade A scare right there. Absolutely top of the line. Could not have done that better myself. Amazing. I absolutely love that scare. I think it was the one in the trailer. What'd you think about that when that happened?
In 2012, I loved it. Now, I don't like it at all.
Why is that?
It just seems it just does not age well to me. Just the effect of it, I don't know. It's not that I don't like it. I don't like it nearly as much as I did when I saw it the first few times in like 2012, 2013. Now when I see it, I don't know. It just comes off as a bit cheesy to me. That's just my opinion. I hate to ruin your day.
It's fine. It's fine. It's so good. No, it does look a little like, because also we're so used to the grainy, low frame rate Super 8 nature of these snuff films, that to see him move at basically 60 frames per second when it's clearly CGI, it is off-putting. It is. I'll give it that. It looks a little weird, but I like the concept of it, and I love the concept of Bagul living in pictures and videos. That is so damn cool to me.
Yeah.
There's little known text, there's little known information about him, because they destroyed all the art, all the pictures, any evidence of him, because every visual medium is a gateway for him to enter the world. Hey, right here at this moment, 42 minutes in or whatever we are in this movie, we have reached the peak of the movie. You have finished the first half of the movie. Bagul lives in pictures and videos, like what our main character is uncovering,
Mm-hmm.
and he's committed all these murders. I want you to take a second and think about if you were showing this movie to someone for the first time and you watched it late at night in the right atmosphere and you got to this moment where the head turned and then you cut it off and said, "Oh, we got work tomorrow. We'll finish it tomorrow." And tomorrow you repeated it with the second half. What they watched tonight is going to keep them up all night. That first half of the movie is so damn good. That's what
Yeah.
I'm replaying it all in my head right now, but that is what resonates with me the most. That first half of the movie. The second half that we're going to watch tomorrow night completely drops the ball, shits the bed, whatever you want to call it. You thought you liked this movie now. Wait till tomorrow. You're going to hate this movie. That is how I feel with this movie because we have reached the halfway point. It is so great, and Bagul has been introduced. We have this awesome mythology. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, yeah, those are all very valid points, and I agree with a lot with what you're saying. If the first half of the movie it's an A+ for me right now. I mean, it is super scary. You've got this side plots, you've got this mystery you're trying to uncover. You're not really sure what's going on. It's scary. You've got, intense moments with characters, and it's all contained in a small environment, which I love. It all takes place in the house. That's pretty much it. Um, there's just so much good stuff going on. And like you said, if you cut that movie off and say, "Hey, I can't finish it tonight. I'll finish it tomorrow," you were like, "Man, this movie is kicking ass. A
Yep.
plus." The second half is a different story, depending on who you ask. But for the majority of people, it is a different story.
It is. And boy, I don't know about you, but I feel like we go downhill fast from here. Um, I'm gonna let you take it away, man.
Yeah, so just a couple more things before we get to that second half. Kind of in that scene, I do like the scene where I saw it coming from a million miles away, but I still do like it, even though it is a little cheesy. When he's holding the picture up at the window and he's looking, and then he pulls it down and he sees Bagul back in the bushes,
Mm-hmm.
and you really start to get you know, the feeling that I want you to think about this. You got this guy, and he's trying to write this true crime book. He has no idea what he's getting himself into. He stumbled upon something else that is just insane, and he's not telling anybody about it other than this deputy, which he's not even really telling him all that much about it. He's kind of keeping it all to himself. He's drinking. He's staying up all night. He hasn't told his family. His family's already not happy with him. And he's dealing with all this, and it's all happening. And he's trying to keep himself together. It's just very anxiety inducing. It's just the tension you feel. I really felt that this time the go around. Not so much the scary stuff. We know that stuff's there, but the tension that this guy's facing with all this, he's trying to do it all by himself. And granted, he put himself in this situation, but trying to deal with all that at once, it really builds the tension in the movie of, damn, what is this guy going to do? I mean, he has just put himself in the worst position possible, him and his family.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. He's putting a lot of stress on himself, and he also feels isolated too. He feels like he can't talk to his family about it without scaring them. He obviously can't go to the police. The professor only knows what he's told, so he really doesn't have an outlet to help him out with this, other than drinking and reminiscing on the golden days. I started to get hints of No Country for Old Men when I was
Mhm.
watching it this time around, in the sense that this guy thinks he knows what he's getting into, but just has no idea. Like, this is leagues beyond what he was used to, leagues beyond what he was expecting, way above his pay grade. he was getting himself way in over his head. That's this kind of story to me, and it does it really well. And if you're paying attention, you're starting to see Ellison crack under the pressure, and you're kind of waiting for that moment where he just has a mental breakdown or something. But the first problem with this movie is at this point, it keeps piling things on. It keeps piling on new elements to the story. We're well halfway into this movie. It's still introducing new elements and new lore and new aspects to this case. If you squint and tilt your head, you might be able to say that it's a theme of you're overburdening yourself. There's way more out there than you thought. You're in over your head. Maybe it's weak if that's the theme you were going for. But the movie just keeps on piling and it keeps on piling, and not in a good Ellison struggling kind of way. In a bad, the audience is failing to keep up kind of way. Because there were moments in this movie, even though I've seen it multiple times, where I started to get a little bit lost, especially when they started talking about the addresses and the patterns with the addresses.
Yeah.
It seems like plain and simple stuff, but here I am in this movie, like trying to,
Correct.
because I think that's important, but really it's not as important as you think. And I'm too busy thinking about that and trying to retrace these addresses and dates when I should be paying attention to the damn movie. But
Correct.
this movie starts piling things on, especially about children. I'd like you to take that away.
Yeah. A lot of stuff with. I'll be honest. I don't know where you're going with this. Can you take over?
It just kind of talking about, like I said, the first half of this movie is so good, and I wanted to talk about it at the end, but I'll talk about it now. The idea, the synopsis that you have this guy who just discovered a demon who lives in pictures, and he has to struggle with keeping those pictures and videos alive for his own selfish gains, which risks the demon coming into the world, or does he destroy it and leave it all behind? That is an A+ format of a movie. I
Absolutely.
am in love with that synopsis. That is so damn good. I would read that book. I would write that screenplay. I want to see that. But they kept adding to it, and they kept shoving more things into it. Specifically, the part with the missing kids. You know, missing kids is scary enough. Hey, but Ghoul eats the kids. Okay, plain and simple. That's it.
Yep.
Ghoul ate the kids. They're missing. Who's going to believe you? But you start getting into this discussion about how, oh, well, all these murders couldn't have been done by an old man, so the people were drugged, so someone who was weak could commit them, and all the victims were drugged, but also there was like a cult symbol, and each kid is missing. And fast forward to the end, where you see these ghost children running around the house, like popping out at the shadows, and like a very long sequence of them just like, peekaboo, and running off camera. That was dumb. That was dumb as hell to me. You know how I feel about child actors. Children are not scary. They're just not. They can be good, but a child cannot act scary enough to add validity to an R-rated movie. It just can't. I'm sorry. Shout out to you guys, but the movie started to really just sink for me when these kids started taking the spotlight and showing up way too much. I mean, you have the scene where the dad thinks he sees something outside or he hears something outside, so he goes outside with a bat at night, and he turns and he sees like a Rottweiler is like snarling at him. He's like, all right, get out of here. I'm going to bash your brains in. And behind him, you see this line of 5 missing children with ghostly makeup on their face and a dramatic light behind them in the fog. Cheesy shit, dude. Like grade A Swiss. You know what I'm saying? It's just not good. It's not interesting. You find the kid who's having a nightmare attack in the bush. That was scary. Voila. But you also have the last trip to the attic where he's like falling through the hole and he
Yeah.
looks back on the video because he was videotaping the whole ordeal. He fell through the hole. He looks back and in one frame, there's like 5 pairs of child ghost hands wrapping around him. Like, what the fuck? Like, no, I'm here to see Bagul, man. We haven't seen Bagul in like 25 minutes. So no, you started to get real weak when it started to be like, oh, but the kids aren't missing. They were the murderers the whole time. It's a mess, man. I really started to get angry at this point. But how did you react when it started to shift towards the kids?
I felt the same way that you did. I started to roll my eyes and said, oh, no, don't do this.
No.
The scene, the especially a long scene where there are some scenes where he's walking through the house by himself with the bat and he's looking, and some of this stuff, it does build tension. But then the long extended scene where the ghost kids are running around and the makeup is horrible. God, it's just not scary. It looks like I could probably make something better. And it's not scary, it's cheesy. And then, like you said, the scene where he's falling through the roof or the ceiling and it's got the ghost hands on him. It's just like, oh, no. It was so much better when it was subtle. It was doing with the films. You had the mystery of Bagul. That's all you need. You don't need all this extra stuff. If the kid, if you want to introduce the kids at the very, very last, at the ending, okay. But once I started to see that, it started to kind of fall off for me as well. And it just comes across as cheesy and just, if you want to mention the kids, fine. But when you start showing them, it lost a lot of the scare factor on me as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It loses the scare factor really fast. That's probably why they saved the last snuff film for last. The last and most famous snuff film comes out of the second half, and it's the lawnmower, the lawn care, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a family chilling inside, and then it cuts to a lawnmower running in the rain, and the spotlight is on the lawnmower, and you really can't see anything in front of it. And it goes on for a couple seconds too long just to make you really like, what is it? What is it? And then loud, screeching, horrible noise. It runs over some woman's face. Now, it doesn't get mutilated like Saw would do, but it gets you. And effectively, that jump gets you every time. The sound design is very good, but that is, I think, the highlight of the movie for a lot of people. I see that as being the favorite snuff film out of all of them.
It was mine. It was mine as well. And I remember the
Yeah.
first time I saw it, I just was like, I just, wow, it blew me away. It was so terrifying, and the loud noise and just the concept, and it just runs long. The lawnmower runs just long enough for you to kind of just, nothing happens, and you kind of zoom in. You're like, when is something going to happen? And boom, get you. I mean, it's just perfection right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Scott Derrickson and the writer, I think they just had a folder of like 5 or 6 really good, like Super 8 snuff films. And we're like, all right, let's make a movie around this because this is too good to just waste.
Yep.
So it was really good. That was the last good scare, I think, of the movie. Because now we're getting to a point. First of all, the daughter, is seeing the ghost child in her room. She's
Mhm.
seeing the drawing of Bagul. The daughter knows about the ghost daughter in the house. The next day, the daughter, who's told not to paint outside her room, paints a picture of said ghost daughter swinging on the wall.
Right.
Mom's furious. Dad's like, oh shit, I'm busted. And she's like, that's the ghost girl that used to live in the house that dad's writing her book about. Mom's furious. They have the fight in the bedroom. Um, Brought up my point already about, are you really in danger though? Because what's happened? But I understand where she's coming from. It is a weird, and it's a snake move. It's a snake move to move your family, but also you didn't look at the house beforehand. Come on, but
Yeah, that is a bit interesting. I guess maybe if you just let your husband handle everything, you're like, you know what? I trust you. Sure, we'll move here. Why not? I don't need to look into this house. But I feel like maybe just maybe if, hey, the new house, what's the address? Oh, I might just look it up on Google, just kind of see what pops up. The first thing that's going to pop up is boom, where this murder happened. And
Yes.
that is kind of a little bit of a plot hole, but I guess maybe the wife is so far detached from everything, she's just like, you know what, I don't care.
That's got to be. It's the only explanation I could think of. Because I mean, if you brought up the point that your husband moved you 2 houses down from a murder scene last time around, why are you going to trust him on this move? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
kind of a not really realistic there. A little bit on the mom, but it is obviously the dad's bad call. Um, so the cat's out of the bag, and dad's losing his mind. He's going to sleep drunk. He's drinking all the time. He has a conversation with Deputy So and So where he's like panicking. He's like, "Do you believe in the paranormal?" And his eyes are all big, and he's
Yeah.
not shaved. He's looking like shit. And the deputy's like, "Yeah, you've been kind of drinking from that whiskey bottle." And
He's like, no, I don't drink, I swear.
he's like, "No, not at all. No." So it's really playing on the factor of Ellison doesn't know what to believe. He thinks his own eyes are betraying him. And that's especially evident in one of the nights where he packs up the Super 8 and he wakes up to find that it's out and rolling in the office. He packs up again. It's out and rolling in the office again.
Yeah.
So Ghost Kid's playing a trick on him, I guess. But one of the times he enters the office, the table's set up, the Super 8's not there. So he goes in and he's waving his arm over the table, trying to make sure that the Super 8's not actually there because he is losing his mind. He feels like he's seeing things, he feels like he's hallucinating, and he can't trust his own sight. So that's kind of an unspoken theme in this part of the movie, and I can rock with it. That's pretty good. But we get the sequence where he wakes up out of a dead sleep and he climbs up the ladder into the attic and he sees a slumber party of ghost kids watching the Super 8 in the attic. And Mr. Boogie walks in towards the screen and then pops out of the peripheral that he clearly is not watching. Did that scene scare you?
I'm gonna be honest. I love that scene. I do.
Really?
I do. As much as I don't like the ghost kids, I don't like that. I just like the fact that they set it up differently. Where, yes, there's been a couple scenes where he wakes up in the middle of the night, the Super 8's rolling. This time it's in the attic, and the tension's kind of at an all-time high at that moment. And he climbs up there. Yes, I could probably. I think it would be better without the kids. I think if he just walked up there and it was just rolling by itself and then Bagul pops out, that would have been so much better than having
Oh,
the
yeah.
kids. But that aside, he freaks out, he falls down, he's absolutely losing his shit, and then the Super 8 just gets thrown on the ground, and it's just like, oh my god, like wow. The tension at that point for me is very high, despite the creepy, stupid looking children. At that point, he's like, dude, F this, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so before we go into the next part, yes, I did like that scene. I actually did.
You're right. If they subtracted the kids, it'd be a little bit scarier. Because I was too busy rolling my eyes to notice Bagul pop out. You know what I mean? Like it was so
I agree. I agree with you that stuff really took away from the movie.
it does. It makes it feel childish too. Like I don't know, like Stranger Things. Too much of that. Ugh. But he hits his head on the ladder going down. He snaps out of his trance. He's like, all right, I'm done. I'm out of here. He gathers up all the Super 8 stuff, all the films, the boxes. He goes outside of the fire pit and he burns it all. His wife comes out and is like, what are you doing? He's like, we're leaving right now. So they pack up in the middle of the night and they dip out of town.
Yep.
Yay, movie's over.
You know what? Kudos to them for actually making a smart decision in a horror film, even though it
Yeah.
doesn't pay off. But still, at the time, it seemed like a great idea.
Yeah, at the time, it did.
And I love the sound design where he's throwing the films in and he's burning them, and it's like that playback of like the films playing. It's like
Yep.
That's so good. That's so good. If you got to catch on to that, it adds to it. And he tells the wife, and at this point, they've had so many arguments and stuff, and things really heating up. And he's like, "I promise, I love you. I just need." It really just hones in on the fact of there are a lot of people out there. They have their 15 minutes. And they just can't let it go. And they're like, I need this. I love this. This is my career. This is my passion. It's what I do. I just need to hit it big one more time. And all that stuff builds up. And he's like, you know what? I don't care. He's like, this isn't about my legacy as a writer anymore. This is about, my family. I have to do what's right for my family. It takes him a while to realize that, but he does. And so he gets the kids, gets them out of home. They're taken off. He gets pulled over. Who's he get pulled over by? The sheriff from the beginning of the movie, who I'm not going to say he's like a dick. I think he's very understandable in his how he feels about the whole situation. But he's like, it's a little bit late. Why are you getting out of here like this? He said, I'm taking your advice. He said, what advice? He said, I'm getting my stuff and I'm getting out of here. Oh, he's like, well, what happened? I want to make sure you didn't get bullied out of town, so you don't write about it in your book. And he's like, there is no book. I'm done. And so they head out, and you're like, oh, nice. The family lives. Everything's over. Of course, not so fast.
Happy ending. He gets his house back in a great housing market. Now, the sheriff, his character has two scenes in this movie. One where he's being a dick, giving him a little bit of exposition about you can't use our department.
Right.
And another where he's being a dick about bye. And that's it. He doesn't really provide. I don't even want to say that he's like a plot device because he really doesn't add anything substantial to progressing the plot forward. He's just there as like a validation point. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but you could subtract the sheriff completely and you'd have the same movie. So I
Right.
don't know. But that's just one of those things. Anyway, they move back to their old house. Everything's hunky dory. The book is packed up. Deputy so and so is trying to reach him, but he's declining that call. He's
I love how they moved back into their house and it's just a freaking mansion. And then
yeah,
the house they were living in was like,
a
just like a
house.
little old, like,
Uh,
it's like, how did you go from this to this? I don't know.
I don't know, dude. If that's that important to you, I question that because why would you move out of there to write a book, man? Just go to the open house of that murder house and go back to your mansion.
Exactly. So yeah, back to what you were saying. Deputy so and so keeps calling him. He's calling him. He's declining it. He's trying to put all this behind. He doesn't want anything to do with it. And they get back home. Everything's looking good. Ellison goes to move something up in the attic. What does he find, Jeff?
He finds the box. What's the box doing in this house? That's so silly.
The box, the home movies, they're back. They're indestructible. The Super 8 films with the projector are back. And at this time, which I laughed a lot at this part where he dumps the box over. It's just a bag that says extended cut. It's like, what?
It's like, all right, he's just whipping out a Sharpie, Bagul.
He's like, oh, wait, yeah, I got these extended cuts for you. It would have been so much better if it was just a brown bag with nothing on it. And he just,
Right.
it's just
Or
little things like that. Just,
yeah. I don't know. It's less is more, and we're not stupid, okay? We can piece these things together. You don't have to explain to us that this is a different different version of the film. But before he goes up there, he gets a call from the professor who tells him that Bagul lives in the pictures and lives in the video. And he's starting to freak out. He's like, well, what happens if you destroy the pictures? And the
yeah.
professor's like, what's really going on? That's the last we hear from the professor, just here to give us more information that we already kind of deduced. Thanks. But he gets a call from Deputy so-and-so, who's frantic and explained to him, he's like, dude, you shouldn't have moved because all of these murder victims, all of these, here's the part I can't keep up with. I'm lost on this part. All of the murder victims previously lived in the prior victim's house, but then they moved back to their house? Something like that?
I'm in the same camp of you where I'm a little confused on that. What I do know is that they lived in the previous house of where it happened, of the previous murders.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they moved out. And when they did, it lengthened the timeline. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. That's something I need to look into more. But from what we get is that he's saying, hey, you're fucked.
Yeah, and I don't know why he would figure that too, because Deputy So and So doesn't think that it's a demon. So a little bit of a plot hole there. I'm still hung up on the damn houses thing because, like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that a demon travels with a family into that house and it stays in that house. Like that doesn't take rocket scientists to figure out.
All
But
right, so hold on one second.
tell me,
I've got IMDb pulled up right here. It says every family had previously lived in the house where the last murder took place, and each new murder occurred shortly after the family moved into their new residence. By moving back to his old home after living at the site of the previous murders, Ellison has placed himself and his family in line to be the next victims. So we kind of got it right.
so you live there, and then once you move out, that's when you get killed.
Correct. Which, so if they would have stayed there, they would have been fine.
You're telling me Bagul, who is actively haunting that house, wasn't going to do anything to him until he left?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like either way, like you're gonna, something was gonna happen.
It's like a strategy board game figuring that out. And also, Deputy So and So doesn't have anything to do with the paranormal aspect of this case. He's not thinking about a demon or trends or anything like that. He's like, oh no, you moved. And when you move, Deputy So and So said, when you move out of the house where the previous family lives, that's when he gets you. As far as Deputy So and So knows, per their conversation, this is a 70-year-old man
Correct.
who has crossed state lines, admittedly. But how the hell did you get that? I mean, how did you even get that Ellison moving now is what puts him in danger rather than staying in this house?
It definitely is a bit confusing, and I don't think we're the only people that feel like that. Again, one of those things where maybe too many cooks in the kitchen. You're just kind of adding stuff on there. I think it would have just been more cohesive if it just said, hey, if you find these movies and you watch them, that opens the portal. Yes, that kind of sounds like the Ring ripoff, but
It is a lot like the ring, yeah.
it gets the point across.
It would have been a more clean cut movie because why are you still adding things when we have 15 minutes of runtime left? Why are you still adding things?
I agree. I agree.
Uh,
So at that point, he figures it out and he's like, he goes and watches the extended cut, which was properly labeled. And he sits down, he watches them. And what do we find out? Which we kind of already started to put it together, but it is thrown out there that it was the kids who were making the movies and committing the murders.
it
The
wasn't
missing
Bagul, it was the
the
kids.
missing kids. They didn't go missing. Bagul took control of them, helped them commit these murders, and he watched it happen. And in all the Super 8 films, and this is another part I really hate, is that the kids shoot the movies, they go in front of the camera, they go, I'm like, stop. We get it. Stop. You don't need to do it every time, okay?
Yeah. And that's where the lore gets confusing because now it's like, okay, so Bagul was in the room and he just like, do this, but record it on film so I can come in through the film.
I
You're already in the
think
room.
yeah, I know it is a bit confusing. I think it was he possessed the children at some point and he helped them carry out what they did because let's be honest, no 6, 7 year old is going to have the mindset or the willpower to do what they did by tying up all these people and killing them. That's not very likely. And I think he helped them do that, and they were like kind of under his possession or spell. Um, and then he takes them after that. I don't know. It is kind of confusing. Maybe we could do some more research into it to somebody that knows for 100%.
Yeah. Well, we get it. It gets messy. He finds a new box of the extended cuts, and he finds a kid saying "shush" at the end and disappearing. And then he drinks his tea, or his coffee, which has been poisoned by his own daughter. Whoop de doo! Got that green poison in them.
Uh-oh.
And then the napkin says "Good night, Dad" or something like that.
I will say this, at least it wasn't shoehorned in there. There is a part earlier on in the film where she's helping the mom. She's like, "Can I make dad coffee?"
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a
Foreshadowing
maybe
is there, yeah.
it is there. Maybe that was kind of the point where she started to become possessed. Maybe I don't know. And so there is that foreshadowing. And so he starts to get groggy and he passes out, wakes up, he's tied up. Um, the wife and the kid are tied up and he can't say anything. And the girl walks in with the axe. And it's not that I have anything against killer kids because I think if it's done well, I mean, it can be creepy and effective. But the way it's done in this film, it just is a bit cheesy. She cuts him up, kills him, and
Paints the
she's making
walls.
paints the house painting is what they end up calling the movie house painting 2011 or whatever. And the other ghost kids are running around. And I feel like the scene, and she's covered in blood, and she's toting around an axe, and she's like writing the plans on the cardboard. It just seems way too drawn out. I mean, this scene was like 10 minutes long. I'm like,
Too
okay,
long.
I get it. She killed them. She was possessed by Bagul. That's it. That's all I need to know. I don't need 10 minutes of her sitting at the desk, writing the note, getting up, shooting the movie, going around it's just like, man, okay, I get it.
Leave it up to the imagination. Have a swinging shot like at the end of H2O. Go for the head, cut to black. That's it. That's all you need. You don't need to be standing there monologuing about, see, Dad, the longer versions are better. Shot like, dude, but
She's like, I'll make you famous again, daddy.
come on, Kruger.
Come on. I
Yeah,
said,
no.
oh god.
Oh no, it's so bad. But she kills him. Bagul appears in his personified form. You get a good look at him. He carries her off into the film, and then he pops out again and he scares you. Ah! And that's it. Now, a couple things there. Bagul is finally revealed. This is where this is your only chance to get a good look at him. How did they do on the creature design?
I think they did well. I did make the Michael Jackson joke earlier, and I still stand by that. But I think it is. I think it's an overall good look. I mean, it's not Freddie or Michael, but hey, it looks kind of scary. You got the long hair, you're all black. It's kind of the weird looking face. Is it a human? Is it a demon? I don't know what it is. I think if you didn't have all the stupid stuff with the kids, it would have been even scarier. But as far as the look, I think it's fine. I like it. I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. A lot of people seem divided on it. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I've seen worse, but it also goes back to the golden rule of don't show me the monster. Once you show me it, the mystery's gone. And there was a lot of mystery, and when all I saw is a side profile in a pool or a glimpse in a mirror, or like a white and black dot in the bush, that was scary. And he had the perfect face design for obscured, far away,
Yeah.
blink and you'll miss it shots. Up close, I can't say I was a big fan of it. Looked a little bit too trick or treat for me, but I'll take what I can get at this point. Um, the damn kids, man, the damn kids are standing in the screen, and they all got like the eyeshadow on, and they're all standing there trying to look scary by doing the Kubrick stare, where they just like look at the floor, then stare at you up through their eyebrows, and they're all just like standing there real tense, and then they run away as Bagul brings the newest kid into the film. No, man. No.
Yeah.
The fire's out. It's done. This movie ended as a wet fart, and it's just Sinister, I've held this opinion since 2012, and I still hold it now, 12 years later, even just rewatching it and dissecting it like this. Sinister is my least favorite horror movie ending of all time. There are some bad ones out there. There are some stinkers, but they're in stinker movies. The
Correct.
problem with the ending to Sinister and why it's my least favorite out of every horror movie I've ever seen is because it was such a far fall from grace. I mean, the first half of this movie, you had solid A minus at the worst material, and you fell so damn far and collapsed under your own weight of just needless plot threads. It's so sad because I was so in and then I was just so out. I mean, it was a rapid turnaround. Did you have that same turnaround with the ending? Where does the ending stand? I know there's worse out there, but have your opinions changed?
No, it hasn't. I'm right there with you. It is a pretty bad ending, and it's unfortunate because like you said, if you're watching a bad movie and the ending sucks, it's like, okay, well, I didn't care about this movie to begin
Right.
with. But when you're watching a movie like this, that for most of the movie has been an A
Mm-hmm.
quality film, you're like, man, this is awesome. You get this ending, it's like, oh man, it really takes the wind out of your sails. It knocks it down a letter grade for me. And it's unfortunate. I think I read somewhere where they kind of wanted to keep the ending a little bit more ambiguous, but I think the studios may have gotten involved. I don't know if that's true or
That's the
not.
death sentence for every movie, man. Every time a movie has some bad aspects, it's always studio interference. Always.
Yep. And so I think they wanted I don't know. But yeah, it's unfortunate, man, because as much as this movie is known for how the Super 8 films in its moments are so like terrifying, at the same end, it also has, you can't acknowledge that the film doesn't have a terrible ending because it does.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, great stuff, shit ending. Find the in between.
Finally, like be an average movie across the board. Don't start great and turn awful. You can start awful and turn great. That's fine too, but you didn't do that. You put all your heavy hitters up front in the beginning, all the good snuff films up front. You enticed us. And like I said a little bit ago, this movie would have been a perfect horror movie for me and would have been in my top 10 favorites if the child plot line was completely gone. You have a guy struggling with the dilemma of should I keep this fame or should I keep my family first? And a demon who lives in pictures and video. I know it was done in the ring, but that's scary as hell.
Yep.
And the longer he keeps these videos to write his book, the more the demon has the ability to come through. That is an awesome, awesome story, man. That's the Sinister I wanted to see. But this cult of ghost children? What? You just dropped the Cult of Thorn one movie in. Knock it off, dude. A demon in pictures is scary. I came here because the trailer promised me a demon living in still images. That was scary. Pennywise did it in the 80s. Samara, I think her name is in The Ring. That might be The Grudge. I don't know. The Ring did it. Living in pictures is a very scary idea. And the snuff films are pushing the boundaries. So you had the makings for such a good movie, man, and an instant classic. But yeah, science might say that it's the scariest movie of all time or whatever, but science ain't watching the ending.
Yeah, and science had maybe the lowest heart rate
Yeah.
of all time. So yeah, that is Sinister. I think there obviously is a sequel, which I'm sure we will get to at some point. I think me and you that went and saw Sinister 2 together?
No, we didn't see it, but I remember you texting me when you were straight out of the theaters. I remember your immediate reaction. You were hyped to go see number two, and I was
Man,
like,
I
"Let me know
was
how it is."
so pumped. I couldn't I saw it with somebody because I know I didn't go by
It
myself. I
wasn't
can't
me.
remember who I was with. Um, we'll watch this. I haven't seen it. I've only seen it once. I saw it once it came out. I hated it. I thought it was terrible. It was not, and it wasn't the worst movie I've ever seen, but it had nothing to do with the good qualities of the first movie
Oh,
at
I
all.
bet.
And they try to redo the Super 8 thing again because they knew everybody loved it. It's not as effective. But at some point we'll get into Sinister 2, and I've always held out hope. I've held out hope for a long time that Sinister 3 could possibly happen. I've seen reports throughout the years saying that the Scott Derrickson would do it, and they would maybe figure something out. Maybe that will happen one day. It's been 2015 with Sinister 2, so it's been almost
Mhm.
10 years now.
Oof.
Maybe it will happen one day. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go see it when it does. I mean, unless it's a prequel and unless you retcon the whole child storyline, I don't care, man. Like it's go back to the drawing board. I'd be okay if you we're gonna enter the decade where 2000s and 2010 movies are getting remade like 80s and 90s movies are. We're gonna
Right.
get there. I'd be okay if Sinister was remade and the child line was gone completely and it was just about a demon who lives in pictures. I'd be okay with that. That's the movie I want to see. That's the movie I went to see. That's the movie I thought I was getting. Do a prequel, but you've lost. I think you've lost me. I'm not watching number three, honestly.
Well, we'll probably never get it, so you won't have to worry about it.
Good.
But all right, so yeah, let's do our grade. And of course, since I own the Blu-ray,
Ah, you got the honors.
that means I have the honors. Okay, I will start first. This movie to me for the longest time was one of the scariest films of all time. I held it at such a high regard. Yes, I know the ending sucked, but there was so many good things in this movie that I love to discuss this movie with people, and I'm glad we got the chance to finally do it.
Mhm.
The more the Super 8 films aren't as effective now as they were back then. I've seen so many stuff now. It's hard to really get me really fired up and scared, but they still are very effective. The sound design is amazing. I love the storyline in this for the most part until they start getting too many plots in there. All I need is that you've got this guy, he's a struggling true crime writer. Yes, he's putting his family in a shit situation, but he wants to make it big just one more time. How much are you willing to pay to make it one more time? And, it's a small set, condensed characters. I like the characters. I like the side plot with the family and the stuff going on. I like Bagul's design. uh, it's a really creepy movie, and I think for 3/4 of the movie you're really there, and then the last half, the ending just takes all the wind out of your sails, and it
Mhm.
sucks. I hate that. um, but despite the ending not being very good, I still hold this movie in a pretty high regard. One of the biggest what could have beens in horror history to me.
Oh yeah.
And with that being said, even though there are some things that I do not like about this movie, the highs hit so high, I think it still deserves a good rating. I'm gonna give Sinister. I'm gonna give it a solid B. I'm gonna give it a solid
Okay.
B.
That's fair. That's good. And you think it would have been an A if the ending was different?
If they would, it would have been an A. If they would have done this movie without like the ghost children and the ending, this movie probably would have ended up as an A plus. I mean, it was that the first half of this movie is damn good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's about the sentiment I think most people have. A lot of people are excited to go back and rewatch this. They're always like, "Oh, dude, Sinister! I got so creeped out when I saw that." Everyone remembers the highs of watching the lawnmower kill and watching the pool and the burning car. Everyone remembers, like, dude, that movie used to creep me out, man. The
Yeah.
sound. No one ever talks about the ending. No one ever talks about the elephant in the room and how a movie ends. They always talk about the highs of the movie. I'm guilty of that too, man. It's I got rose tinted glasses for the first time I watched that. So, but Sinister is not a bad movie. It's not. It just it fell from grace too far for me. And it's got the sauce. It's definitely got the secret sauce. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got true crime thriller. It's got paranormal and demons. It's got family drama. It's got a closed one location, low budget Put everything into your writing and dialogue setup. It's even got a little bit of lessons about isolation, and I saw some people talking about it has lessons for stranger danger. Like it hits on a lot of strong horror genre sub themes that it does really well. The found footage, obviously, found footage. My favorite subgenre of horror is found footage movies. Give me a found footage horror movie. I don't care how bad it is, and I'll eat that shit up. I love found footage, dude. I think 3 of my top 10 are found footage movies, but I love it. And you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. I'd like to see a full movie like this, but the lows are low. The lows are very low. So let me give you my four golden rules of horror. My first golden rule: don't show me the monster. Nailed it, but at the ending, we got a full shot of him. Saw a little too much of him. The creature design, I know you liked it. I wasn't that crazy about it. He was scarier when I only saw glimpses. I mean, if we were plucking through found footage and I saw a head turning in a pool or a reflection in the mirror, I'd pause the TV and I'd get up there and I'd be like, what is it? What is it? You know? But you give me a full frontal shot of him and his workman gloves and his, I don't know, man. I wasn't crazy about the creature design, but I can't take that away because that is not the rule. The rule is not about creature design. The rule is about revealing him. And I'm going to say the strongest aspect of this movie is me wanting to see more of Bagul. So I would say you concealed him enough to win that one. So you move from an F to a D. My second golden rule: be scary at all times, not just when the threat is on screen. The strong aspect of Bagul is when he's on screen, when there's a picture with him, when there's a video with him. The children are not scary. I don't care if they're on screen. Bagul, I only really get the sense that Bagul is a threat when he's there on screen or when we're watching the video. Because when we're watching a video, I feel him coming out of the TV like the Ring. I feel the hairs on my neck stand up. But when we're not watching a snuff film, Bagul's not in there at the family breakfast table. I'm not getting that sense. So, yeah, you can make the argument about the scorpion and the snake and the dog forms being there, but that's not enough. I can't give you that one. You were not scary at all times, only when he was on screen. Don't over rely on jump scares. You had a lot of jump scares. The kid coming out of the box, most namely. Um, some stupid one with the girl in the raincoat, like popping out of the shadows like this and hanging out for too long. That was really bad. Scarecrow, the jump scares are pretty bad, except for the lawnmower one. But the scariness of this movie does not come from the jump scares. The scariness of this movie comes from the snuff films. And those were not jump scares except for the lawnmower. Those are fantastic. The highlights of this movie are the scares, and it's not from jump scares. I'll give you that one. Move from a D to a C. Now, the last one, most important one, I already addressed a little bit. Push the boundaries. You did, man. You pushed the boundaries. And you could have kept pushing them. You had a great platform for yourself to keep pushing these horror boundaries because you already, in the very first scene, weren't afraid to shy away from violence against kids. Violence against kids is one of those boundaries that movies shy away from. You didn't. You pushed it, man. You could have pushed it a little bit farther. I don't know how. That's up to you to decide. But you did nail it, and I'd like to see you nail it more. So you got 3 of my 4 golden rules. You're in the B range. This movie would have been an A. This movie would have been in my top 10 favorite movies, favorite horror movies for sure, if you got rid of that child plot line. But because you didn't, it's all love, but I got to leave you at a B minus. That's a good B minus. I hated your ending. You're my least favorite horror ending of all time. I got to take that into account. B minus is the best I can do.
Listen, if it's your least favorite horror ending of all time and it still gets a B,
it's a strong movie.
That's a strong movie. Not many movies can endure that kind of ending and still have that kind of a grade. So
yeah, it's definitely not Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare.
Oh, it's the greatest movie of all time. I was gonna say one last thing that I did see online I thought was kind of interesting. You know, in the film where we didn't talk about that one the most, where they're going through like slitting the throats and stuff.
Yeah.
So you know the scene where they walk in and the parents, and it's the little chihuahua,
Mhm.
and it's just barking. I saw online, and obviously this isn't like a Inception plot hole crazy thing. Someone said online, I knew it was the kids automatically because of that scene. And I said, how? And they said because the dog, while it was barking, it did not try to attack the killer. Therefore, it knew who the killer was by not attacking. And I said, that is interesting because if you go into someone's home and they own a dog, maybe they might bark at you if they don't know you. They probably will attack you if they don't know you. But if they do know you, but you're doing something strange that's out of the ordinary, they might start barking at you. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of interesting. It said, as soon as I saw the dog barking but not attacking, I knew they were familiar with who the killer was, and therefore I knew it was the kid.
That's an interesting headcanon. Yeah, I can see it. That makes sense. I wouldn't say a dog's reaction is one size fits all, though. Especially when you're talking about chihuahuas. Chihuahuas bark at everything, but you do have evidence that it is a tangible individual. It means Bagul is not the one holding the camera and holding the knives. It means an individual that the dog can see is the one that's there. So, yeah, I can see it. I I don't think it's a good enough generalization to be intentional by the writer, but yeah, that's kind of cool. I like that.
Yep. And then the last thing is, I don't know if we mentioned this, but this was produced by Blumhouse. I feel like that's all we do is talk about Blumhouse movies.
Dude, I don't think we've done an A24 movie yet, have we?
No, we haven't. That might be.
No, we've done the classics and the Blumhouses. We got to get away from Blumhouse on the next one.
I know. They just
give them a break.
I know. So yeah. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. This was such a fun review. I know it's been a long one, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe, check us out. We've been putting in a lot of work, and we're going to continue to do so for the next year. If you have any recommendations, no one's done so yet, but let us know in the comments if there's something you want to watch. We will gladly do it and do it right.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All right, so we will see you guys in the next one. This is Every Horror Film, where horror is forever. We'll see you.
The mummy has now been located.
The living mummy. The living mummy.
Bullets won't stop.
Some creature out of time.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
He's completely out of control.
Now, I saw those bodies.
Is he a man or a monster?
You actually knew a werewolf in a peaceful town where nothing ever happened.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
In the mystical regions of Transylvania.